Greetings, everyone. Now, politics isn't my favorite topic, but sometimes I will discuss various topics like politics in gaming, comic books, and other forms of media. Now, that's not really the bread and butter of the channel. The bread and butter of the channel is me mainly discussing comic books, comic book history, gaming, and the occasional cosplay makeup. But today I wish to put some focus on politics and comics because Jonathan Hickman has recently raised questions about prison reform. Now, I don't really have too much of an opinion towards prison reform because I am not that very well educated on it. However, you can research the topic. There are various .gov sites you can visit to educate yourself, but the basic idea of prison reform is to make treatment of prisoners who are incarcerated for less severe crimes a little less severe, make them be treated better, and to also reduce their sentencing. Now, in terms of all of this, there are those who believe that it's impossible to reform prisoners because they believe that all prisoners are bad and they should be treated as such. But I also know that there are one too many prisoners who were wrongfully imprisoned for severe criminal acts. One story that you can look up is the story of Ronald Cotton, who was wrongfully convicted of rape of a college student, and he ended up doing someone else's time. That brings us to Hellions #1 by Jonathan Hickman. Now, I just read this title recently because I'm a bit late in the game, but what Hickman is doing here is basically giving his opinion on prison reform in quite a bold way. Now, this is interesting because it is Mr. Sinister who even suggests this to begin with. The issue starts with a mission going in disarray because Alex Summers nearly murders a member of this anti-mutant gang in San Francisco, and if it hadn't been for Wolverine, of all people, Alex probably would have succeeded. It's important to note that at least on Krakoa, all mutants live by a golden standard: no killing. And if they do, they're exiled. We've seen Sabretooth get exiled during House of X. Now, this leads to a moment with the Quiet Council discussing what the heck they should do with the more troubled or violent mutants that live on Krakoa, as most of them have severe mental health issues or troubled pasts that cause them to lash out. These include Orphan Maker, Nanny, Wild Child, Empath, and Scalp Hunter. Now, of course, Cyclops is outraged that his brother is even brought into this meeting at all. He wants to believe his brother to be innocent, but it's Nathaniel Essex who ends up creating a proposition for these mutants who acted out and committed criminal acts on Krakoa or even outside of Krakoa. He brings up the question of incarceration or reform, and he decides most of these mutants who did this come from severely abusive households. They harbor emotional wounds that haven't been healed properly. Alex is the exception among them, but that doesn't mean he deserves to be exiled. And Sinister proposes a form of reform for these degenerates, and he forms up a task force consisting of them where Betsy Braddock keeps them in check. Now, this seems to bring forth Hickman's attitudes towards prison reform and how it could potentially work in the United States of America, because Krakoa is a utopia where everything is in balance. Everyone is at peace and are very sexually healthy, mind you. So if they come up with a prison reform act that could be everlasting through the Hellions task force to give criminal mutants a second chance, who is to say that that same process cannot work here in the real world? Prison reform is a complex issue, no doubt, and one that Hickman is clearly not afraid of tackling with Hellions. As a story, Hellions is bloody, it's violent, it has explicit material, but it is also discussing hardcore adult issues by baking it into the comic. Now, I know many have issues with politics being baked into comic book narratives, but in this case, it works because prison reform is very complex and it will be debated about for years. There will be those who believe prisoners are irredeemable. Others will say that those who are imprisoned for lesser crimes should be treated as humanely as possible. But overall, Hickman seems to have the right idea here. That's it for today. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe and leave a like on the video. Fanfiction links and the link to my blog will be down in the description box below. God bless, happy viewing, and have a nice night.